This is Molendinarius here from Latinum. You can find Latinum at latinum.org.uk, and you can also find Latinum at Patreon, which gives you access to all of my Latin courses and resources. I've been producing this material since 2006. We are now continuing on with chapter 14 of the Janua Linguarum Reserata, the Gate of Languages, of Tongues, Unlocked, of John Amos Comenius. Arbores, trees, arborique fructus, and fruits belonging to trees. Stirps, a plant, a sapling, in altum excrescens, growing upon high, growing up, et e stipite, expandens robustos ramos, and out of its stalk, its stump, stipite, expandens, displaying robustos ramos, strong arms literally, the branches, the boughs of the tree. Obtegensque se frondibus, and covering itself. Obtegensque, the que on the end is and, of course. Se, itself, frondibus, with green leaves, with fronds, as we could say in English. Arbor est, is a tree. Circum tecta cortice, covered around, tecta from the word for roof, so roofed around, covered around, cortice, with a bark. Sub quo, under which, reperies librum et alburnum, you will find the rind, the peel, the inward bark, et alburnum, and a white sap. Mox, ligni pulpam, after that the pulp wood, the substance of the wood, et in penitissima pulpa medullam, and in the most inward pulp, the pith of the plant, the very center of it. So those are the parts of a tree, as described in the English of the 18th century, 17th century. Paragraph 109. Quaedam, some, habent, they have, lignum interveniis distinctum, their wood or timber parted between with veins which are distinguishable, they are clear. Idioque fissile, and therefore may be cleft, may be cut with an axe, broken very easily. We would say fissile. That word exists in English. Something that if you hit it with a hammer will just split down the line of the grain. Alii lentum et flexile, others pliant and limber. For example, there's one kind of tree here which the locals used to use to make collars for their goats to put the bells around their necks, because this wood is very pliant and flexible. Alii rigidum et fragile, others are stiff, they're tough and brittle. Pro vario usu, and according to their several uses. For example, I have a harpsichord here, which is made of many different kinds of wood. The jacks are made of pear wood, the case is made of cedar, the soundboard is made of spruce, and so on and so forth, because each of these types of wood has got a different property. Paragraph 110. Folia sunt omnibus venosa. The leaves are, to all of them, venous. In other words, they have veins, streaks. They have little lines that carry through all of the sap throughout the plant, bring the carbon dioxide into the plant, and so on and so forth. Multis lanuginosa. Many of them are downy, mossy. Plerisque per ambitum crenata. And the most part of leaves are on the edge of the leaf, notched. Serrata, little sharp points. Or crenata, some sort of bumpy points around the edge of the leaf. Decidunt sub hiemem. They fall off sub hiemem, a little bit before winter. Notice how this is said in Latin. We'd say sub winter, a bit before. Under winter, literally. Decidunt sub hiemem. Vere, in the springtime, regerminant. They bud again. Praeterquam gummosis. Save only the gummy ones. Now that's Old English. We would say except for the gummy ones, the resinous trees, such as buxo, the box tree, taxo, the yew tree, et aliis, and others, quae semper virent, which are always green. Notice that a tree being green in Latin is a verb. Quae semper virent. Paragraph 111. Quaedam fiunt umbriferae. Some are shade-bearing. There are shady trees. Ab exuberante copia viridantium foliorum. Because of the extreme amount, the exuberant amount of the greenness, the verdantness of their leaves, their verdant green leaves, because they have so many green leaves. Opacantes vireta, shadowing the green bowers. A bower, a shaded place overhung by branches, in Latin vireta. Opacantes vireta, ut such as tilia, the lime tree or linden tree, platanus, the plane tree, acer, the maple tree, fraxinus, the ash tree, ulmus, the elm tree, et caeterae latifoliae, and other broad-leaved trees. Paragraph 112. Steriles, those trees that are barren. Ministrant, well, pabulum foco, they give, they afford in the Old English, either fuel for the hearth, the fire, the stove in other words, pabulum foco, ut such as alnus, the alder tree, betula, the birch tree, figus, the wild ash, populus alba, the white poplar tree, populus nigra, the asp tree, well, or materiam aedificiis, or materials, that is timber, for buildings, ut such as quercus, the oak tree, pinus, the pine tree, larix, the larch tree, cedrus, the cedar tree. Well, vimina, or twigs that can be bent easily, osiers in the Old English, quorum contextione, by means of which weaving, or wreathing in the Old English, corbes et crates fiunt, baskets and hurdles are made. A hurdle is a kind of fence made by weaving the twigs together, and hurdles were also used between the construction timber of buildings and then plastered over, giving a wattle and daub type of plaster, that the plaster was put onto the hurdle. But they're also used in the garden for stopping the wind. Ut, as in salix, the willow tree, the withy or sallow, ligustrum, and the privet or pine tree, et caetera, etc. Paragraph 113. Pomiferae sunt notissimae fructiferarum. So, of those that bear fruit, that's the fructiferarum, the most notable are the ones that bear poma, the ones that carry poma, pomiferae. So the ones that carry poma are the most notable of the fruit-bearing trees. Pomiferae sunt notissimae fructiferarum, habentes, having, fructum, extrinsecus, in tectum, molli corticella. They have the fruit on the outside covered by a soft rind, a thin cortex, a very thin skin. Intus, in the inside. Notice the way the English said this back in the day. Ithe, for in the. Intus, well, granatum, either with a kernel, well, ossiculatum, or a stone. These we're talking about soft fruits like apricots, peaches, and so on and so forth. Paragraph 114. Granata poma sunt. The poms, that is the soft fruits, cored with kernels in them, the ones that have grainy kernels are ficus, the fig, perum, the pear, malum, the apple. Quod vel vulgares, which is either the vulgar kind, the common apple, the one that we just call an apple, well, aureum, or the golden apple, in other words, the orange. Citrium, the pomegranate. Punicum, the pom citron, and Chidonium, the quince. Mespilum, the medlar. Sorbum, the service tree, the service berry. Ossiculata sunt, those with stones in them are, understood here, the ossiculata sunt, the ones with stones in them are, Cerassum, the cherry, Prunum, the prune, the plum when it's on the tree, prune when it's dried in our modern English, Persicum, the peach, Armeniacum, the apricot, which we now call an apricot. But in this Old English, apricot, Oliva, the olive, and cornum, the cornel. Paragraph 115. Proximae pomiferis sunt nuciferae. Next to the pom bearers, the soft fruits, are the nut bearers, nuciferae, quae, which, sub cortice duro, under a hard shell, occultant nucleum inclusum putamini, is they are inside this. They have a kernel which is closed with a skin. Ut, as in, juglans, the walnut, juglans, amygdalus, the almond, castanea, the chestnut. Said, but, e palma, from the palm tree, accipies dactylos, you will receive dates. Ex abiete, from the fir tree, strobilos, fir nuts. E quercu, gallas, from the oak tree, oak apples, what we now call acorns, or galls. E subere et illice glandes. And from the cork tree and the stone oak, we get acorns. E fago, and from the beech tree, glandes faginas, we get beech apples or mast, which is edible, but people don't really eat it much anymore. Paragraph 116. Baciferae sunt. The berry-carrying trees are, the ones that bear berries, quae racematim, which in clusters, ferunt baccas moliores, they carry softer berries, such as morus, the mulberry tree, laurus, the laurel or bay tree, and sorbus sylvestris, and the wild service tree, and so on and so forth. Paragraph 117. Aromatiferae sunt nobis innominatae. Now, this is a very strange sentence for the Janua Linguarum Reserata, which is all about giving things names. But in this sentence, we say there are no names. The spice-bearing trees have no names with us. In other words, these are all trees that grow in the tropics. They didn't grow in Europe. And so the trees themselves were not known. And so the names of the trees are known to people commonly. And so he's not bothering to give them. Quae progignunt piper, which bring forth, they give birth to, piper, pepper, carophylla, cloves, nuces myristicas, nutmegs, so moscatas, also called moscatas, muscat, macidi inclusas, which are shut up in mace. Now the nutmeg, which you might see in the supermarket sometimes, it looks like a small round nut, and you might find in another part of the spice shelf some red things that's called mace. They're actually the same plant. The mace is the outer cover of the nutmeg, and they're separated and dried, and the mace is sold separately to the nutmeg. Aliosque odoriferas fructus, and other odoriferous, sweet-smelling fruits. E quibus condituras paramus, out of which we provide confitures, conserves, jams, sweets, things like that, nice desserts, and so on and so forth. Paragraph 118. Resinosae, those that are full of rosin, the resinous trees. Sunt pinus et picea, are the pine and pitch trees. E quibus, out of which resina extillat, the rosin does drop out. Ex hac autem eliquatur pix et arungia, out of which pitch and tar are liquefied, are melted. Et lentiscus, and the mastic tree, ex qua, from which colligitur masticae, mastic is gathered. Et terebinthus, and the turpentine tree, because turpentine originally came from a tree. It's still used by artists and in some applications for dissolving damar gum, for example, for making painter's varnish. Artificial turpentine doesn't work. But if you buy turpentine now in the shop, you are not getting turpentine that's come from a turpentine tree, but some petrochemical derivative. Anyway, terebinthus, the turpentine tree, the terebinth, e qua fluit terebintina, from which turpentine flows. Et quae miram, tus, camporam, and those trees which sweat forth myrrh, which is a kind of resin that's used to make a nice smell, tus, frankincense, camporam, camphire, ceteraeque gummi exudant, and other gums. Paragraph 119. Vis scire, would you like to know, quomodo? So paragraph 119. Vis scire, would you like to know, quomodo fructiscent, how they bring forth fruit. Fruticiscent. Actually, I read that wrong. It's fructiscent. Very unusual word. I don't think you'll find that commonly in any place. Fructiscent. Viscere quomodo fructiscent. Ante omnia, before everything, first of all, surculus gemat, the young graph, the scion, in other words, a little stick that grows out in the springtime, buddeth. It has a bud. It buds in our modern English. Tum, gemma, hiscans, sorry. I'm a little bit tired here, and this text is not so clear. Ante omnia surculus gemat, and then before everything, the little bud, it buds. Tum gemma hians protrudit florem, and then the bud, which then opens up slightly, the nop, as he calls it. Not a word that I would know, because I haven't been alive that long, apparently. So it thrusteth forth the flower, protrudit florem, it sends forth, it sends out, it protrudes the flower. In ficu prorumpit grossulus sine flore, in a fig tree, the green fig, it breaks out from the stick without a flower. Actually, the fig is a flower, but it's inside out. So when you see a fig, the flower is actually inside the fig. This is called the grossulus. In Coriolulus ante gematione, and with the hazel tree before, with the tassel. Tandem fructus petilo pensilis, and at last the fruit, after all of this has happened, and it's the flowers are fertilized and everything and so on and so forth, petiolo pensilis, dangling by the stalk, the steel in the Old English, we don't use it anymore, hanging, dangling by the stalk. Crescit, it grows. Donec maturescat, until it matures, it gets ripe or mellow. And the final paragraph, Arboretum frequens est silva, a place thick set with trees, a lot of trees there, is a wood, quam aemoine virdicatam, which being pleasant and green, dices nemus, you shall call a grove of trees, we would usually say in English, but a grove. Densam et inviam saltum, being thick, and inviam, unpassable, you can't get through it, saltum, a forest. Disparatam et intercisam, being chopped and cropped. Recrescentemque, and growing back again. Silvam caedum, a copse, and it would be called a coppice in English, where the wood is cut every few years to make firewood and it grows back. Opacam et incaeduam lucum, but if it's shady, it's opaque, very dark, and uncut, lucum, a thicket. Speciatim autem, but in particular, quercetum is a grove of oak trees, pinetum, a grove of pine trees, betuletum, a grove of willow trees, birch trees, and salictam, a grove of willows, or an osier ground, and you would have had those for making baskets and so on and so forth. Salictum, my apologies. Quercetum, pinetum, betuletum, salictum. And these are the different specialist kinds of groves of trees. That was paragraph 120.